We're live
Can you
now.
see me?
I can see you.
All right.
Okay,
But,
guys.
but you can't
So
hear me. That's probably the best of both worlds.
we can hear you. People are joining. We want to welcome everybody. We are going to chat a few headlines before our guest Terry Moran joins us. Um, Here's the deal. Senator Tester's in his. Are you in your swather or your tractor?
Yeah, we're swathing for now. Tractor will be tomorrow.
So we are trying this
Yeah.
live from the swather. So you're going to have to just be patient with his cell phone connection because it's not great, but we wanted to get on and chat for a few minutes before we bring in Terry Moran in about 10 minutes. You probably of course know him as the journalist who was fired from ABC recently over a tweet that called the president and his advisor world class haters, but he's moved over here to Substack, to independent journalism. We're going to talk to him about his latest reporting from Springfield, Ohio. But I want to take a few minutes right now, Senator, to chat about our friend. And that is Montana's longest running Congressman, Pat Williams, who died at the age of 87 on Wednesday. Just a huge loss for the state of Montana.
Yeah, Pat was a fine man. I still had a lot of people in Washington D.C. ask me, if Pat Williams was still alive when I was serving, and asked how he was doing. He built a lot of friends in Washington D.C. because, quite frankly, he was a very effective, serious legislator. He did a lot of really good work while he was in there. I think he was the longest serving
Hmm.
House member for Montana. I think he was elected half a dozen times, maybe more than that. Actually, I think he was 9 times. I think he was
Yeah,
elected and
18 years.
reelected. Yeah, 18 years. And somebody that I got to watch speak a number of times during my state legislature and, well, hell, even when I was on the school board. And Pat was somebody who could talk about serious issues and interject comedy and it was quite entertaining. I mean, he really did have a gift for giving a really good speech.
Hmm.
And but more importantly, I mean, him and then I got to serve with Carol, his wife, in the state legislature, and they were just really quality people. And I know that your mate is tough. So I know Carol's probably going through some hard times right now. But the fact is, I think that she's very proud, and I think the state of Montana is very proud of Pat Williams and what he accomplished and his lifetime of service to the state of Montana.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never knew him as a sitting House member because that was before my time in the world of journalism. But I've known him in his life afterward, and he developed just like the most special friendship with my 13-year-old son. Like they were just buddies and they had the same mischievous spirit and Pat always had that kind of twinkle in his eye when when he walked into a room, and he was just such a special person, and we will miss him surely. And we're waiting for some details on services for him, but we know that he will be lying in state at the Montana State Capitol. So we send all of our love to the Williams family. Just truly a remarkable man. Let's get into some headlines here. Did you see the news on the big, beautiful bill today?
No, tell me, what's the news on the big beautiful bill?
Okay, so some more setbacks. The Senate parliamentarian, who we talked about the other day over the public land stuff, basically the referee of the Senate here rejected some provisions on Medicaid. She said that the GOP change to that section that basically would have rewritten how states can tax Medicaid providers does not fall in line with that Byrd rule that we talked about. That's the rule that would allow it to pass with a simple majority. So this violates the Byrd rule, and it's complicated, but basically it would have cut in half the amount of money that states would receive in tax revenue from Medicaid providers. And critics say that would have created major, major challenges for rural hospitals who rely on that money to keep the doors open. And then she also flagged other Medicaid provisions. Now, the White House still pushing for a July 4th deadline here. So, what does your crystal ball say, Senator Tester?
Well, look, I mean, if the White House is pushing and the Congress falls in line, they'll probably get it done uh, by the first before the 4th of July. I mean, I really think that there's a lot of things in this bill that are really really bad. A lot of things, and as I've said before, I think they need to take it back to the drawing board and rewrite it up. The Medicaid stuff, and I talked about this a little bit on TV. It has the impact of really doing some real bad things to rural America. I think it's got bad things all over the place, but rural America is especially hard hit because I think we'll lose facilities. And I know that there's a lot of folks that don't understand rural America that serve in Congress, but the truth is this is deadly, and hopefully the whole bill has changed, but at least this part has changed so it more accurately reflects the challenges in rural America when it comes to access to health care. Because it just doesn't affect the people on
Yeah,
Medicaid; it affects everybody. Everybody.
we're gonna see too. I mean, already there's talk about reworking some of these sections, including that public land section. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but something we are watching for sure. Meanwhile, Axios reporting the Trump administration is going to limit classified information it shares with Congress. This is after a leak about the Saturday bombing of Iran's nuclear sites. That internal assessment showed the damage was not as catastrophic as the president had claimed. So there's a lot of talk here about classified information, but I think we're seeing more outrage over this than that signal chat we talked about a few months back.
Well, the signal chat was a serious breach of classified information and confidence, and we don't want to go back over that. But I can almost tell him without reservation if he's worried about leaks, it didn't come from the Democrats because Democrats were never told what the hell is going on. And so he should probably look inside his own house if he wants to figure out what's going on. By the way, there's nothing wrong with telling people the truth about what transpired, and everybody knows that everybody knows it. First of all, they know number one, our military is the best in the world. They know that they carry out missions with incredible professionalism, and when they set out to do something, they usually succeed. That's a fact. So the fact that they bombed, the nuclear facilities in Iran, hell of a feat. But nobody's really surprised by that because that's what they do. They're the best in the business. What I think is amazing is before the dust is even settled, you got people in administrations talking about what the damage was to it, and everybody sees the satellite pictures. There's no way in hell you can make that assessment from the pictures. So either somebody's bullshitting somebody, or um, or they're just flat lying to people. But the bottom line is, tell the people the truth. By the way, don't limit classified briefings to Congress. They need to know what the hell's going on. Remember, this whole operation should have put before we initiated
Hi,
because it was not an
Terry.
emergency situation. So that's kind of where
Hi,
we're at.
Maritza. Hello,
Hey,
sir.
looky
How
here.
are
Look,
you?
look,
Okay, so
looky.
we have Terry joining us now, and I need to give you a little update here because Senator Tester is on the swather on the
I can tell
farm.
that.
So we have some good service here in parts of the farm and some not so great service. So we have to be a little patient with him.
Well, same here. Although no, I'm in the hotel in Springfield, so I've got good service. But I'm glad he's doing good work on the ground and good work out here. So
Well, we are
Just
so
just trying to feed
happy.
the people. Go
We are
ahead.
so happy to have you with us, veteran journalist Terry Moran, who worked for decades at ABC News, recently fired over a tweet, and now doing his independent journalism right here on Substack. And you're actually in Springfield, Ohio, Terry. I can't wait to talk to you about this.
yeah, it's a place I was last fall when J.D. Vance and then Donald Trump slandered this community. They were eating pets and cats and dogs. And now they're looking at an August 3rd deadline. The Haitian community, 15 to 20,000, of having to leave. So because their status has been revoked. Trump. It's an incredible story. I'm really glad I'm here on Substack doing it. I wish I could do it myself.
All right,
So,
I'm going to let
so
Senator Tester
Terry,
take over here.
so what? I mean, what are you seeing? I mean, what? I know they're concerned, but are they packing their bags? Are they appealing in court? What are they? Or do they think they have standing to stay? I know there's some children who've probably been born here. I mean, what are they? What are they doing? What are they? You know.
Well, they're living a lot of them in fear. They really are, because there was a rumor the other day that ICE agents were here. It didn't seem to come true, but everybody basically stayed in their homes. And these are people who were here lawfully, most of them gainfully employed. They've lifted up the economy of this city, which was in decline. 8, 10 years ago, if you'd walk down Main Street, it was desolate. Now it's thriving. A lot of businesses have moved in. They're very worried about losing their workers. But in answer to your question, different families are doing different things. Talking to people is utterly heartbreaking, because some are almost in denial. Like, they can't imagine going back to Haiti. One man pulled up his shirt and showed me a terrible scar from the violence that he was subjected to, simply because he worked at a bank, and they assumed he had money. I mean, it's chaos there. Others have good asylum claims, as he might as well. And some are just now thinking, Canada, Brazil, nobody believes they can go back safely to Haiti at this time. That's why they're here, and here productively, as I said. They're neighbors here, the mayor here, the city manager, the city council, the governor, Governor DeWine. All of them think it's a terrible idea to uproot these people from a community that they have settled in and lifted up, and send them back to Haiti.
So, Terry, so the president said he was going to get rid of the criminals, and I don't know that there's anybody that disagrees with that. Do these people have a criminal record?
It's a community of 15 to 20,000. So there are some bad guys, right? But you're absolutely, the vast majority of them, they are, they came, they're either they established businesses, or they went to work in businesses lawfully. Once again, they paid taxes. I can't tell you how many people have said, look, I filled out my W-2 every year. I've got a social security number in compliance with all the laws. They kept in touch with immigration, and that's the considerable majority. There's been a slight uptick in crime in the past 8, 10 years, but there's no evidence that it's linked to the increase to the increase in the Haitian population. And the majority of people here, yes, they want the bad guys out, but they like their city growing. All boats are rising here, and that's now in jeopardy.
Terry, I remember, I mean, I was in Philadelphia during that debate, and I remember being in a press watch room next door, and the jaws that dropped when that whole "they're eating the dog, they're eating the cats" thing came out. Like, I think if I remember right, Kamala Harris even kind of just made this face like, this is so absurd. How did that just happen? And then the stories we heard from Springfield, and my show team at the time, I worked for Scripps News, and we went to Springfield and we did a whole live show talking to people, talking to the community. They were terrified, and not just the Haitians, like the people in the community who had been helping them. We had tried to book this pastor and he agreed. And then all of a sudden he said, I can't, I'm getting death threats. I mean, a pastor who just is trying to help people. And I just remember them saying, like, this isn't us. This isn't coming from inside. This is all coming from outside because of these words, these false claims on the national stage. Do they still feel this that same kind of fear, or is it just shifted now to like, what the hell are we gonna do in August?
Yeah, they are. Look, they had the Proud Boys marching down the street. They had the KKK here, and so
Yeah.
they are afraid of extremist violence and lone wolf violence in particular. But they're more afraid of our own government right now. They see what's happening around. There was a young Haitian man. He told me, "I see that anyone with a mask on their face, and if they just write ICE on them on their chest, I don't know who they are. I mean, he's from Haiti. He knows kidnapping, and he's. I have no idea. They live and they aren't going out. They aren't part of the community anymore. They're actually hiding essentially from our own government, even though the vast majority of them were here lawfully, and obeying the law. And I got to tell you, most of their neighbors don't like this. I mean, they're like Joe Rogan. You've heard Joe Rogan now a couple of times talk pretty frankly about this is not what we mean when we say get order at the border. He says, I'm not on your team if you're separating families, if you're snatching people out of Home Depot. And Senator, your question, are they are there bad guys? Why aren't they going after the bad guys first? Why are they going after families? Why are they going after ordinary people? It's easier. And the cruelty is the point. They're sending the message. They want people to self deport. And so the maximum amount of force applied to the most vulnerable people send that message.
And the point I've heard so many people make is that, what, 2 weeks ago now, not even, in Minnesota, we had a political assassination
Yeah.
done by a United States citizen, a white guy,
Yeah.
allegedly.
Yeah. And that's, I think the fear here is something that a lot of us feel inside, that the boundaries are shifting and being shifted deliberately, that there's a daily kind of bludgeoning of our civic life with a gleeful cruelty, rhetorically, sometimes physically, and through the policies and law. The cruelty is the point in order to strike fear in people, not just Haitians who might leave, but people are concerned about standing up. I was here with the mayor, talked with the mayor. You probably might have talked to him, Mayor Rue. He was happy to stand in front of cameras and say these are good people, and now he won't do it because of the danger to him.
Wow. So I can imagine the Haitians themselves are not speaking to camera either.
Not to camera, Senator, but there's goodness all the time, and there's something to be encouraged about. There are people here in very of with faith commitments and with civic commitments who are preparing for, in the classic way, nonviolent disobedience to stand between their neighbors and the forces of law that they believe are being used unjustly. So uh, the Haitians will speak. We have a few on camera, but none with their face to the camera. So some brave, a beautiful family spoke to us. Three kids, mom and dad. He worked for the bank, a national bank, and he's a different fellow. He worked for the national bank in Haiti, and then that made him a target. And he's working in the factory now, and he says, "This is what you do as a father." He says, And then a young man who had a brain tumor. He had it in Haiti. They did not catch it. It was slow moving, so he was here. He had these terrible headaches. He was diagnosed under Obamacare and had surgery, but they had to remove the pituitary gland. So uh, he needs medications that are not available in Haiti to manage his hormonal system, or he will die. He is looking at death if they send him back to Haiti. Not death by violence, which everyone's afraid of, just he'll die. And he said, if they're going to send me somewhere, I'd rather die.
I think though that's so important about the work that you're doing and journalists in general is to try to humanize and personalize these stories because it's really easy to just say, "Oh, well, we're going to get rid of all the bad guys or we're going to we're going to go after the criminals and they don't belong here." But when you think about these people as human beings going through these horrific things, and I know when I was there, I mean, I there was this little girl who I hugged for a long time, this little Haitian girl, and that was the only life she had ever known. And I think about her all the time. What does her future look like? What will happen without this home that they've developed? And not only that, but what's going to happen to that town who now relies on this group of people for work and for contributions to the community? And what's going to happen to that, Terry?
Well, they're in trouble already. A lot of them have already started laying off some of the Haitians because they have lost legal status and they don't want to get on the wrong side of ICE. And so some of the Haitians have already lost their job. They're having trouble paying their rent and getting food. And so some of the churches are packing boxes and delivering food, in part because they're also scared to go out to the grocery stores. So, yeah, the business community is not happy at all. They see businesses have come in. Dole has a big plant here. There's some auto machining plants here that came because there was this labor force, young, willing to work hard, well trained, and the place thrived. It really has thrived. Now that doesn't mean there weren't serious growing pains, real tensions here over healthcare. You put
Hmm.
50, 20,000 people in a town of 20,000, in a town of 54,000, and all of a sudden you've got long lines. The schools, a lot more kids needed language assistance. And there was an incident where a Haitian person driving a car crashed into a bus and a child was killed. And rules of the road are very different in Haiti, and a lot of people had trouble with that. Those are growing pains. But the city leaders, the business leaders, the church leaders, and most normal people, let's face it, most normal people, and that's most people, I still think, they stay on the sidelines. They aren't out there. They don't want to march with the Proud Boys, and I think they feel bad. I talked to a woman when I was here, when you were there, when you were here, Maritza, last year when they were closing the schools from bomb threats. I went to school,
Hmm.
mom picking up her son, and she was walking away, and I said, "So, what do you think of all this?" She says, "He needs to be in school. I work nights. I work nights. He's special needs. I can't do both. And this is ridiculous." And I said, "Well, what do you think of this whole thing with the Haitians?" She said, "Everybody deserves a fair chance." That's what she said. And she said it just like that. And I'll bet you that woman, if she voted at all, would have voted for Donald Trump. But she's decent like most people and was sick of what was happening to her life and to her neighbors. So, despite all that, the hammer is coming down here as of August 3rd. And there may be some major civil disobedience happening around that time. So I'll be back for sure.
So are they gonna, Terry? Are they just gonna come in and round them up and throw them on planes and ship them to El Salvador or Haiti or what?
Well, I mean, that's the question. That's why that rumor, when it went around that there were ICE agents here, that just panicked everybody. They don't know how it's going to come down. Some of them have legitimate, it would seem to me, although who knows these days, asylum claims, maybe many of them. But then you look at how ICE is operated. I don't know if they're actual government employees or contractors who come in masked. The brutality is part of the point, and it's not gangsters they're going after. So
Hell,
people very well.
I even saw him go after a U.S. senator.
Yes, yeah. Think of that. What's happening? What is happening? Uh, it's why I'm glad I'm here. It is something to me that is unimaginable in this country. There's a way to deport people. There's a way to revoke temporary protected status. There's a way that reflects our values and the political system. Trump got elected to, change immigration policy. Fair enough. I don't think this reflects who we are.
If you're joining in, we have Senator John Tester, former Senator John Tester, on his swather on his farm in Big Sandy. I think he's trying to show us what he's looking at, but it may have frozen. So we'll keep talking. Oh, there he is. There he is. I do want to ask, somebody
You
wrote in
were
the
close
comments.
too, so
Oh, okay. Somebody wrote in the comments, Terry, like, do churches need financial help? Like, how can people help this community right now?
That's it.
Because that's really, so many people want to know, how do I help? What can I do?
Yeah, that's a great thing. You know what I'll do? The Haitian Community Center here is kind of a
Mhm.
clearinghouse for a lot of people. You probably met Viles Dorsenville,
Yes.
who is still at it. He's here, and a number of these churches. I was at an amazing breakfast the other day where churches, very conservative, traditional white evangelical churches, pastors with some of the black pastors here, all sitting down over breakfast to talk about these, talk them through. What I can do is I will definitely put the Haitian Community Center in this feed, or when I post this, I'll attach it,
Perfect.
and that's a great place to start. He's a good man. It does good work.
Senator, are you back?
so yeah, I've been here the whole time. I may not be moving on your screen, but what the hell? You want to talk about the Haitians some more? Can we talk about laid off news reporters?
Sure. No,
There's a
what
couple of
about
them on the screen.
Oh, we have two. We have two.
Yeah. So I mean, misery loves company, right? Is that the way it goes? Um,
Well, I hate, actually, I
so
think we,
I
I
just
think we have
want to
three
get.
people who lost their jobs on this call, Senator, if we're being
I
fair.
know, but only two of them were in the news media. Okay. So that's not being very fair, Maritza. But okay, it's fair. So look, if you can't, if you don't want to talk about this, I think everybody understands. But I've I've kind of I've kind of been disappointed in the news media. And there were some legal firms too. They just kind of fold when pressure gets put on them. And I don't know if that was the case in yours, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, that's just an overall observation. Um, have you seen the news media change in the last 6 months? And have they been um, less critical, less investigative, less, well, you name it, what news media does? Why they were, well, by the way, why they were a pain in the ass to elected officials is because they went out and told a story. Oftentimes, the elected official didn't want that story told. Are they still doing that? Because it just makes me wonder when good people get laid off. That's all.
Well, thank you. I will say, I've, I've, I posted what I posted. I tweeted what I tweeted, whatever, because I thought it was true, and still think it's true. And ABC Disney didn't like it, and that's didn't like that in accordance with their policies. So be it. But I think in answer to your question, and I'm happy. I mean, frankly, I feel like I walked out of a cave. This is a brand new world for me. Excited about doing this work in this way. It's the future. It's where the 2028 election is going to happen, and the 2026, much more so than I think in the legacy news media. But for me, I think the media is overwhelmed. I think my colleagues, and I was there, right? I got more and more frustrated. Trump too is so much more aggressive and more radical than Trump one. It's hard to cover it, and he's pushing the boundaries of everything in order to overwhelm the traditional ways of responding to the presidential exercise of power. He dropped an F bomb the other day at the reporters. Now he does that a lot, and I guess nobody should clutch their pearls about it. But there's a point to it. It's consistent with the policies, with the hammer coming down on Harvard, with the threats against reporters, with going after newspapers, going after corporations. Get with the program or else. And how do you cover that using the traditional kind of both sides, and the traditional vocabulary, even a kind of value-free vocabulary? I think that's what I got caught up in. I said, and it wasn't something dashed off. I actually, this may this may be worse, but I actually looked at it and I read it and I thought, yeah, that's true. I called Stephen Miller a world-class hater, and you know, the kind of language that might be needed to accurately and fairly describe what's happening is not available under the traditional canons of journalism. I think that's the biggest thing. Are they also afraid? I would say not from, I'm not telling any tales, but you can see it yourself. Yes, they are afraid.
But Terry, you lost your job over that. I have to ask, I mean, do you wish you would have used harsher words if you were going to lose your job?
No, no. I mean, job loss is a terrible thing, right? Just you have terrible feelings. You 2 in the morning, you wake up,
Yeah.
all that stuff. But on the other hand, I feel exhilarated. I feel like this is a new opportunity. What you guys are doing here in this space, what everybody is doing, feels it feels like a cross between 18th century pamphleteering and a kind of digital bazaar of reporting and opinions and all that stuff. And I love this. I really do. And do I regret what I did? I don't regret it. It's not a great thing to happen in your life. I don't recommend it, but I do not regret it because I wrote what I thought was true, and I'm not going to regret it.
How many years, Terry, did you work in the media business?
Well, almost 28 years at ABC, 27 and some and more than some change years at ABC. And then a few years before in cable, I was at Court TV before that. It's a long time, my whole life, right? My whole working life. It's weird, but I don't miss it. I think, it's partly because this space is so much more natural and human and fun, and you can be yourself and express your passions, but also partly because, this was something I was concerned about for a while. That's why some of my friends thought that I had done it deliberately, because I'd been worrying about being in a dying business. And that's no slag on any of my colleagues. I love my colleagues. I think
Mhm.
they do great work. But it's a dying business, just a demographic fact. And also, ABC's having less impact in the culture. I was having less impact at ABC just by my years. And I just felt the constraints and the lack of open road in front of me. And now, my uncle has a barn. We can put on a show. I mean, that's the way it
Yeah.
feels. That kind of thing. It's
We have John Tester from a swather in a field in Big C. Oh, and he's gone. We'll add him back. Let's see if you can join us back. But I totally agree with you on that. I mean, you got right into this, which I think probably helped you recover and not have so many mornings of like, oh my gosh, what's next. But it is something to be able to be on here, be authentic, have direct interaction where somebody can say, do they need help and how can we help, and we can see that and answer immediately, which is really very cool. And then also just, your video yesterday talking about what you'd seen in Springfield from your hotel, and that resonated with me. I mean, it felt so it was just so real, and it was relatable. And I think that is something that we have lost in our years of trying to condense news to get so much in a 30-minute newscast. And we're able to actually explain things here and talk about the real people and the real stories and the feelings and all of that that go along with it.
yeah, it. This is all the stuff we couldn't put in the stories, right? Our
Yeah.
and it's the stuff that matters. Too much of what I think all the networks have done, they tell the exact same story the exact same way, and they slot them in the exact same order. So it's
Hmm.
Tweedledee and Tweedleding, and there's just not enough. It's just it's not authentic, and I think what these technologies have enabled in so many areas is be yourself. People will like it or not, accept it or not, um, but it doesn't pretend to be something it's not, and so
Absolutely.
that's liberating. There's no voice of God in American news, right? Maybe there once was, but there isn't and shouldn't be.
Those days are over. And I do think that yeah, you're so right. We see the same things over and over and over again, and it just becomes like Charlie Brown's teacher after a certain period of time, right? And I wanted to ask you too. I mean, today we saw true social posts from the president going after specific journalists. This isn't a new tactic. We've seen it, but today he went after Natasha Bertrand of CNN. You've been on the list, certainly when he said to you, like, I've never heard of you, and making his dig there, Jim Acosta, of course, you name it. Can you talk about like the damage that that does not only to real physical threats and fears, but also just to the institution that we both worked in the journalism institution, and people's trust in it, and what it's done to kind of just chip away at something that people used to hold so dearly.
Yeah, it's deliberate, of course. He wants to use the power of his platform and the power of the office of the presidency to undermine anyone who criticizes him or reports on him factually in a way that displeases him or discredits him. And so he's gonna go after people by that. And he has, in some ways, Donald Trump is the first great political influencer. That's what he is. it's his personality. Like you see great influencers who can move product on Instagram, or who can, really, really change the game for someone if they mention their song or their book,
Mhm.
and because people are connected to them in that special way. He has that hardwired connection with his base, and he uses it in malicious ways that also factor into his the way he sees power. It should be all his all the time without anybody standing in his way. That's certainly his personality. I know he's taken an oath to the Constitution, and we'll see how that goes. But his personality is unmistakably authoritarian, unmistakably. And I think the problem for journalists is, how do you hit back? How do you hit back? And you do it with the facts, but he's trashing you and your reporting and everything else. And I do think it requires a different approach uh, that I think one can make out here. One can call a spade here. Donald Trump
When I
has an authoritarian personality. I couldn't say that at ABC, and you couldn't say that at Scripps.
Right. Well, and I think too, I mean, it's not lost on me. I thought about this with the Access Hollywood tape. Billy Bush lost his job over that tape, and Donald Trump became president. You lost your job over this tweet, and he's out there naming specific people today and calling lawmakers stupid and you name it. I mean, it's just he does what he wants and he continues to be elevated.
Yeah, and the smart thing for me, I'm not. One of the things that I'm having trouble with out here is all of a sudden I'm my own producer, and after almost 3 decades,
Yeah,
I'm
right. Yeah.
I'm incompetent, and now my own business or whatever. I got to do all this stuff. So don't listen to me. But the smart play, it seems to me, at a network would be at some point, like Harvard did. No, no. You can come after us. We'll pay the price, but we'll increase our credibility. We'll increase our connection to ordinary Americans, to them in this moment where they need us. And no, we aren't going to knuckle under. We aren't going to cower in front of you. I think people appreciate that, and not just people on the left or liberal side. For example, in my neighborhood, I live in Frederick, Maryland, sort of well outside of Washington, D.C., Purple County, right? Kind of a little bit of both. There are people who I know are as strong Trump voters from conversation from their own social media, who have said to me, I really didn't like what was happening. I thought it was brave for you to stand up and say that. They like the authenticity. They like Trump a lot better than they like me politically, but they get it. And so a corporation that speaks in corporatese and requires that, I think, has a bigger challenge in this moment. There has to be a
Yeah.
change.
Well, and I appreciated, I mean, when I saw the tattoo picture and the tattoos that they had clearly overlaid on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's knuckles, and that people were fighting about, like, no, no, it's real, it's real, it's real. And I appreciated that you pushed back on that in the Oval Office. I mean, after you was that, do you have recollections of how that moment felt in that whole sit down? Like when you left, what was going through your mind? Like,
He was still on it. I mean, he was not happy at all with the interview, and he clearly was not happy with that moment. I was actually. We had a set time. I had a few topics I wanted to get to, and as soon as he said it, I said no. I kind of felt bad for him because it's idiotic to think those are real tattoos. I wouldn't, but polite, respectful. He's the president of the United States, so I felt bad for him. I said, "No, no, you're wrong," and he kept at it. And then
you
I'm kind
kept trying to move on and he wanted to stay on it.
Yeah, and then once it had been established that he thought they were real, and I had established that they weren't, I thought it was time to move on. He still kept at it. So I thought the facts were well established, and I know that there were. I saw that there were some people who wanted me to, Mr. President, kind of
Hmm.
horse, and are you such a fool that you think that I don't do theater, but I was happy that I was also happy. I'll tell you, you'll understand this. That wasn't a question I was going to ask. I was going to ask about Abrego Garcia in terms of the power. do you have the power
Right.
to ignore the courts on this? But that was all kind of coming from my back of my head. Like I'd read this and I was thinking as I said, well, in El Salvador, he doesn't have the, I was thinking, is that right? I was like
Is
a
that
little,
right? Yeah, I think I have that right.
I
Yeah, 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 yeah.
hope I have that right. And I did, which
Well,
was,
absolutely, and I even talked to my best friend about it. She said, because I said, "Well, he thinks it's real." She said, "No, I think he's just. I think they put that there to demonstrate what they thought those tattoos meant."
right.
And then your interview cleared it right up. No, he really thinks those are real tattoos. I know that you have to go in a minute to continue your great reporting, but I'm wondering kind of what's next. What are some other? We know you're going to stick with Springfield. What are some other topics that you want to keep top of mind? I mean, I know as journalists we collect these passion projects and things we care so deeply about throughout our careers. So what are some of the others that you plan to dig into?
It's a good question. I'm new to this, so I haven't thought it through entirely. But August is going to be a big time to come back to here. But the other thing is, I am going to Michigan as I do every summer, most of my life, up north, not too far from Traverse City up there. Um, but I kind of think one of the things that I care a lot about that I know Senator Tester does, and a lot of Democrats, that what's happened to the an opportunity for people, middle class people, to have a good life. I'm going to be up in a cottage that I'm lucky because my father in law, his family built it back in the 1920s. So it's 100 years old. And it's not a second,
Wow.
like a proper cottage, right? It's got all the kids' heights on the door jamb,
Yep.
generations and lots of mementos. And what happened to that ability? My dad was able to take all 10 of his children up north, every year, work for Sears. Um, and people can't do that anymore. I think one of the reasons we have these terrible politics is when people feel that their lives are shrinking, uh,
Hmm.
they get angry. And so, one of the things I'd like to do up in Michigan maybe is take a look at what happened to cottage culture, right? What happened to that, and how can we get it back? And I think people might have some good ideas about that. So that's next on my list. But that's a little that well, it's not so little, but that's
Yeah.
one.
Well, I will let our folks know. I have a feeling if I could predict what happened, I have a feeling Senator Chester's phone died because that's happened to us before. But he is on the swather, and we will continue. We will put this whole interview on Substack and of course on our podcast as well. But Terry, you have an open invitation. There are lots of rural issues, middle America issues that we would love to cover with you if you want to come out to Montana. So you have an open invitation to come join us out here. And I think we could even have some, go boating or floating or hiking, whatever you want to do.
You are going to regret that, Maritza, because I'm
No, no, that's what we love. We love to do it. And I mean, world-class fishing too. So it's not northern Michigan, but it's another good M state.
gorgeous. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Terry, and thank you all for joining us, and we will chat again soon.
Thanks.